Oh my God, they're desperate for content.
Hey, I mean,
can you imagine the dude? Can you imagine the dude on the what was it called again, dude? The
floor is lava.
Floor is lava. Can you imagine you on it?
That's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to get me and some other Avery Dissecting supporters on the show.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't know if you guys remember, but in the planetarium, there's a flat Earth. They got the other planets are all round, but for some reason they made the Earth like a flat table. So it's like the flat Earth, but it's really, really slippery. So I'm like, okay, the joke we're making when we hit the flat Earth is that's even more slippery than Ken Kratz and an inappropriate texting scandal. So, and we have to say inappropriate texting scandal because I want it to get by the censors. So anyway.
Yeah.
I don't know if I can say texting on the floor is lava, so I have to get creative.
And anyway, if you're all ready, I think we'll click click on the go live button.
You already done did it.
I did.
Yeah? You think I don't know how this works? You think I don't see this happening?
Well, anyway, dude, we're going to say good evening to Big Jeff, who is on the East Coast, and good evening. Oh, well, sorry, good afternoon, Jeff. First of all, I was wondering if you could just explain to us exactly whereabouts you are on the East Coast.
I'm in the state of Massachusetts.
Yep.
I consider myself as being from the Boston area, although I live closer to Providence than to Boston.
Right.
But Boston is the place where my wife and I like to go for a night out. If there's no COVID around, which it's a different time. But I'm about 50 miles south of Boston, and the beach is sort of in striking distance. I have to drive a little bit, but I can get there.
Excellent.
And hopefully you're not like the Bostonians that were on the floor is lava. Oh my God, those guys were amazing.
I didn't see them.
They were, first of all, they had to say, they had to go. They said something along the lines of, there was something I was trying to think. Oh, I know what it was. It's all Boston teams are just better than LA sports teams. And then one of his friends is like, oh, that's it. I couldn't put my finger on it. I'm just sitting there watching this going, yeah, all right. Funny part is they get into the room and literally can't go 5 seconds without saying Tom Brady's name, and Rutledge Wood calls him on it. And I thought that was freaking hilarious.
Dude, I thought it was a given that any state has a better sports team than anything in Los Angeles.
Hey, did you hear about the Dodgers? How we got robbed by the Astros a couple years ago in the World Series because they were cheating?
No.
Yes.
And do I sound interested?
I did hear about that. Yes.
We were robbed.
You were robbed. Oh, no. So
yeah, that goes back to the Red Sox manager too.
Right? Footballers with their sandpaper in their shorts, dude. Come on, man.
You've got your sports confused. It was the cricketers with the sandpaper.
Oh, the cricketers. Sorry.
Yeah. What you liked was the ladies' Aussie rules football.
I did love the ladies' Aussie rules football.
Yeah.
Thoroughly entertaining.
Yeah, they are hard. You wouldn't want to argue with them on any issue.
Hey,
Okay, so
those feelings are pretty tough, I'm sure.
Yes, yeah. So, Jeff, I've kind of noticed you on a few of the foul play videos in the as one of the guests and hosting and stuff like that. So what first made you interested in what was going on in Wisconsin? What sort of what's your sort of background to joining this case?
Well, I appreciate that question, Paul. Thank you. I had not watched MAM 1 right when it came out, although I had made it's one of those shows where people had been telling me, oh, you have to watch it. And then right when MAM 2 came out and it was actually heavily advertised, I'm like, oh yeah, I wanted to watch that show. And so I immediately, it was around the Thanksgiving time frame, as I remember, and I had some time off, and I watched episode 1, and I'm like, I thought this can't be real.
Yeah.
And I binge watched it all the way through, and I just could not believe that these people especially Brendan Dassey, who got the screw job of all times, was still in prison. And I started to do a little research, and of course the place that you go to find information on anything is YouTube.
Yeah.
And I actually, the first video I ever watched on it was some Eric Ozie's videos. He had a bunch of them about the Rav. I know he's going to get a big head, but
he started at the crazy. He started at the crazy place, folks. What do you
Well, was there anybody else? I guess
do.
there was Perplexed, and
there was a few of us at the time, but there's definitely a lot more now.
There's a lot more now, and it's a good place for people to come and find information and theories. And in my mind, the more the shenanigans are exposed, the better a chance that Stephen had, because that was really their plan. At the end of the day, was they can pull off something completely brazen, but the fact of the matter is it's going to go away and nobody's going to hear about it, and it's just going to stand, and those two are going to rot in prison. Had it not been for Laura Riccardi and Moira Demos, we would not be here right now.
Right.
So
and this would have all stayed.
That's really what happened.
Right.
That's very interesting. That the fact that as you say, you actually started off with episode sort of series 2, and you've obviously got up to speed very, very quickly. Did you watch some of episode 2 and then go back to series 1?
Well, I watched season. I started with season 2. I had to go back to the beginning. I didn't watch season 2 all the way through. I had this.
No.
I had this. This
you
is not something
wanted
you can stop.
Wanted some context for what you were receiving.
So I only got about halfway through the first episode of season 2 before I got to go back, and actually that's one of the ways I pursued my research. With MAM is I have to learn more about 1985. Because in my mind, if you don't know about 1985, then you really have no context of the lengths that they would have been willing to go to put him back in prison. They needed him to go away. With Tom Kasurik's deposition, the day after.
The word that I like to use. They needed to re-vilify him.
Re-vilified. That's right. Right. Yeah, and Vogel did a good job of that, right? With his sex offense with his cousin, and as rapey as they could make him look, they did, right?
Right, absolutely.
Yeah, and not only that, but have you had a chance to read the John Farrack book, Wrecking Crew?
I have read pieces of it, as we do some independent reading, and we read different chapters. I mean, just about every book. His book is Griesbach's book is amazingly. He doesn't pull any punches, I think, in that, especially when it comes to Vogel.
He comes to the wrong conclusion in the end, but from what I understand, it's well written. Yeah.
So I'm gonna say, just for clarification, though, are we talking about The Innocent Killer or Indefensible? His first or his second book? Right. I've never read that one. I've only read the first book, which he wrote before Making a Murderer came out, in which the first 2/3 of it is excellent, and it deals with what was going on in '85. It's everybody says the first 2/3 of the book is excellent because it covers everything, and then 1/3 of it at the end is trying to cover for things like he's saying how good Ken Kratz's voice, it's got this calming influence, and how trustworthy and honourable Lenk and Colburn are, and you think Michael, are you serious about this? But of course this was all written. Apparently, it was the American Bar Association got him to write this book even before Making a Murderer came out. So what prompted him to write it, I don't know. But I mean, I remember writing to Mike Griesbach and saying, about your book. I put the line, I couldn't put it down for a week, and that's true. I couldn't because as I say, the first 2/3 were good, and the last bit was the last third was just what's the word I'm looking for? Tripe, if you know what tripe is. Or garbage or trash or whatever you want to call it. Yeah. So what was sorry? Can you elaborate a little bit more on Indefensible? Does that cover the sort of same history and everything?
It's actually very interesting. One of the chapters in Indefensible, he's coming home on Christmas Eve, and his family is watching Making a Murderer on television. And for some reason, I don't know if you're familiar with a character in the MAM universe called the German.
Yes.
He all of a sudden, comes across this guy, the German, and Jesus, because of my advanced age, his name is going to escape me because he uses a pseudonym anyway. Braun, I think. Is a pseudonym he
referred to as the German. I know he has a name, but I don't remember it either.
yeah. And his wife, which is actually. Said that he might be the one who killed Teresa Hallback because my dog is coming back with bones that aren't animal bones, and he's got this toolbox and he's got bloody gloves in this gloves that
he was bringing home all kinds of girls' underwear that she couldn't explain.
Couldn't explain, yeah.
Right.
And Griesbach, was able to listen to her recorded interview with Manitowoc Police. They won't release that to us now via FOIA. I'd love to hear it.
Yeah.
And of course, all that evidence related to the German is gone. And from what I understand,
was something too. She came home one night and found a bunch of Wild Cherry Pepsi cans on the porch too. I think, which is they found a Wild Cherry Pepsi can in the RAV4. So that was another potential interesting correlation, you might say.
Yeah. Very interesting correlation, and and he's been in and out of mental institutions his whole life. He's deported now.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, it's just again the myopia. But he starts off by talking about the German, and he's like stunned because could it be possible that they got the wrong guy with Avery? So that leads him down this path of examining all the evidence.
It's definitely possible,
Mike. Along the lines of Mike, I have a YouTube video where he states flat out that when Tom Bergner in 1985, when Tom Bergner of the Manitowoc Police Department, which is different than the sheriff's office, went to discuss with Koerced about the possibility that this was Gregory Allen and not Stephen Avery, he actually brought Penny Bernstein with him on that interview, according to Mike Griesbach. So if you want, I'll send you that video.
So Penny Bernstein really was feeling let down by the Manitowoc County Sheriff's Department. She really was worried about the mouth breather that was calling her, and she eventually went to the Manitowoc PD for satisfaction, is what it sounds like.
And talks to this guy Bergner, who was like the assistant, like the number two in charge, and they both, according to Griesbach, they both went to Koerced, who, when under question, under grilling scrutiny by Deb Strauss and Amy Bergman, could not recall that interview. Could not recall being approached by Bergner or Penny Bernstein.
Wow!
Yeah. Oh, how convenient. Yeah. No, it's interesting.
And his deposition was only a day away.
Yeah.
From Stephen getting
it's interesting. Absolutely. I mean, Sean Atwood also covers in quite a lot of detail, doesn't he, in his book about the German. Have you had a chance to read that one?
No, I want to now. I'm very interested in that line. I mean, Stephen's best chances these days are uncovering possible Denny suspects. There's a lot of lines of research happening that are interesting. It's hard to believe we're going to solve the case at this point. So what we have to do is pile on with KZ's reasonable doubt. And uncovering the shenanigans of law enforcement through listening to the dispatch calls, seeing how the dispatch calls do not align with the CASO reports. You see a recent video from Millbilly that Coburn in his call, somebody's coming up and, oh, look, we found a bracelet. Have we seen that bracelet? Is that bracelet logged in evidence? Where is that bracelet?
Or the phone that Colburn was supposedly found over by the creek.
I have a whole presentation on that phone, the audio box.
Right,
phone. I do. Yeah, that's
plenty of things in this case that were of interest, but we don't know shit about them.
That's right. One of the interesting things about that phone is in order to find the model number of that phone, you had to take the cover off, and if you took the cover off, you get access to the numbers. That's the numbers that you need to, if you want to request the data on that phone from via subpoena.
Right.
And it's not printed. The model number is not printed anywhere else on that phone, as you can see from the release photos.
Except inside the case?
It's you have to take off the battery, and it's underneath the battery is the numbers. But it's one of those old flip phones. So you take out the back case, and then you take out the battery, and then those all the magic numbers that you need.
I used to have a flip phone. I remember. We all thought we were cool with flip phones, didn't we?
We did.
I had a brilliant one, and then my wife decided to trade it in because by doing a trade-in, she got a special deal on a microwave or something, and I was really annoyed about it, because I was happy with my phone. I knew how it worked, but she decided she wanted a new microwave. There was a shop in town that was doing a deal, so she just traded in my phone. And I've got a new contract, a new phone. I was furious.
Hilarious.
That's true. That is. You can ask her. You can ask it. Yes, exactly. Anyway, getting back to what we should be talking about, and that is, so having watched Making a Murderer, what were your thoughts? What sort of led you to go from having being a viewer of a or let's put it this way, from a Gils's point of view, what took you from being duped by a documentary to then being an advocate for for Stephen Brendan getting a new trial? Because we are all brainless idiots that have been duped by a documentary.
Right.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, Woody. Okay, just we're all idiots. We've all been duped. But now let's just see what was it that actually caused us to take the route that we've done.
One of the things that caused me, led me to believe that I could possibly contribute to the case, and many people know that I have a background in cellular technology, an extensive background in cellular technology, and it might be in season 2, episode 1 or 2, where Kathleen Zellner's talking about the cell phone pings.
Yes.
And that actually led me to believe that if I just do a little bit of independent research, then I might be able to, determine for myself whether or not I felt that, this. And she had listed that as one of the sort of her major pieces of evidence. The fact that how far did Teresa Halbach have to drive to get into the vicinity of that tower? And she's right about that. It's very, very odd that she pinged off of that tower if she was still at the Avery salvage yard. And it's literally taken me years to be able to get my hands on that the exact pieces of information that I need. And I'd like to thank Seeking Truth for Good for being the one who finally got me that information through JJax, or Jack 61 as he calls himself these days. When you start to do independent research, you go, so where can I go to find documentation? That was right around the time, Eric Cozy, that you had started up your Discord server, and I went on your Discord server, started talking to a few people, and they were able to hook me up with real documentation. But what really swayed me that this was so fishy was just that the evidence, didn't really, that the key is so obviously planted. Item FL turns up so conveniently, after Brendan's coerced confession.
And to me, looks obviously planted, sitting on top of the concrete dust and so on.
And Henberry has a released picture from the early November searches. I think it's a November 6th or November 8 photo, where there's a flashlight on the ground, pointed under the toolbox, right next to the air compressor. And there's no sign of item FL there.
I gotta take a look at that. I don't think I've seen that yet.
I'll forward it to you on the Discord when we get done.
All right.
That's how. And the fact that it turns up, and you do things like listen to the jail calls. If you listen to the jail calls, Stephen and Dolores are basically laughing at the badness of the case that they have against him. But that was obviously before. But just if one thing is planted, you have to become suspect of everything, and you learn about the evidence. Kratz makes a big deal of how Mam didn't talk about the hood latch swab. Well, that's another thing they didn't do until after Brendan's confession, and they found this enormous amount of DNA on the hood swab. After it should
Don't forget, they have to actually prod him pretty bad to get him to say, to get him under the hood. You know what
get
I
him
mean?
under the hood.
Yeah.
Not to mention get him in the garage, right? We shot her outside the garage. Oh no, we think that's a lie. In the garage. Oh no, now you're making sense, Brian.
Right.
So they needed to do that, of course. When you look at the video that got released, when they go into the garage for the search, you find there's 6 inches of snow on the ground. So anything that happened outside would not have been a very good place to plant evidence, because that would have been really hard to find under all the snow.
Right.
And when you do a little bit of research, what you can find out, especially from the jail calls, is that at that time, right before Brendan's coerced confession, that was right around the time, just after the time that Dean Strang had taken over, and the property bond was going through. So the and if you see who else got picked up, right around that time, Stephen is very optimistic, and Dean Strang is very optimistic that Judge Willis is going to accept the property bond. They've got no reason not to. They're laughing at the case. So this coerced confession really kills two birds with one stone, right? It nails Stephen's alibi, and in what universe you go after his alibi 3 months later instead of right away. But then with the coerced confession and the trumped up charges, they're able to get the bail up, then the value of the salvage yard is not enough.
Enough to cover the bond, right? Yeah.
Right. So that the time you do a little bit of research, independent research, and you find that there's a lot of correlation between events which were kind of seemingly uncorrelated. So there's no doubt in my mind.
Yeah. I always knew they went after Brendan, obviously, because they felt the case against Stephen was weak. But that's an extra interesting, incentive they have there to effectively get the bail up and out of the range where the bond from the yard could do it, or the property would cover the bond. So that's a more direct kind of reason to do it.
Yeah.
So that's very interesting. So and very much, I believe, very much a motivation for them. So yeah.
And who do you go to, right? You could just go, if you, again, do more independent research, and I'm sure you both looked into it. Listen to Brendan's November 6th interview in Crivets, the one with the blinker going on and off.
Yeah.
And at the beginning of that interview, he's speaking the truth, but by the end of that interview, he's stepping out of the middle of the driveway so Teresa Hallback can drive her RAV4 out of the driveway.
Yeah.
Right.
The guy's like, I don't want to put anything into your head, Brendan, but we know she was there, and she was there. We saw her. We actually had to get out of the driveway. So and that's November 6th, and that's just how impressionable he was. I mean,
they were telling him all kinds of stuff though in that call. Yeah, they were telling her. They were telling him she has a medical condition. She needs meds. If you don't tell us where she's at, she's gonna, whatever. Like, I mean, they were. It's like for me again, not an interview. I mean, after talking to Dr. Richard Leo yesterday, what do we think about the November 6th interview? Not an interview.
Almost a scouting report. And to me, if I had to pick one word that describes Brendan, it's non-confrontational. He'll say whatever he needs to get you out of his face. Yeah. And he's going to start taking guesses at what you want to hear, and he's going to say that. And I think that became obvious, which is why they very much targeted him on March 1st. Yeah.
Yeah. I was gonna ask you. I know this is sort of crystal ball time, and obviously there's a certain amount of Occam's razor in this, but
that's right.
When you're looking at the the alternative suspects, for me, I cannot look past Manitrop County Sheriff's Department, because they were the ones that benefited from all of this. I appreciate that, yes, there could be issues with envy, jealousy, dislike of Steve amongst people that are close to him that shouldn't have that kind of maybe shouldn't have that kind of feeling. But what was your take when you watched Making a Murder? I immediately had to get in touch with Sheriff Herman. I was just started appalled with the way that sheriff's department had sort of disgraced policing in general. But I just wondered what your thoughts were. Who do you think is sort of ultimately behind a lot of this?
Well, I mean, it's interesting. You kind of look at the sort of the Venn diagram of things where where the guilters where the guilter's thoughts overlap the truther's thoughts. I think both of us believe that it's an astounding coincidence that Teresa Hallback had an appointment at the Avery Salvage Yard, period, on October 31st. It's just too much of a coincidence. It's too much to believe that this was a coincidence, that she was there and she ends up dead. Yeah. So to me, I mean, and of course the truthers are like, there's just no way that this time in his life, he was very happy with Jody. He listened to the calls he's having with Jody. As a matter of fact, just keep in mind, there's calls with Jody that they will not release from before the 31st of October. Why not? Right? Why not? Is it because they talk about how he rearranged his room, and if they rearranged the room and put the bed where it was, and there's no way that Brendan could have seen Teresa Hallback tied up to the bed? If it's where it was, So why did he talk to Jody and say, "Hey, I got the photographer coming"? Why won't they release the call? Why are there calls they won't release before the 31st? But yeah. So was this a massive setup? Did Manitowoc exploit some tragedy? Did she happen to die in a car accident? Did she overdose? Of course, Ken Kratz painted her as Saint Teresa, and I grieve with the family. But as you, the FBI agent Eric Cozy that you've interviewed, what's Moore? Is that his name?
Moore. Yeah.
Stephen Moore. There was not a proper victimology done on her, and her whitewashing as Saint Teresa is not believable. How many people even know that she smoked?
Teresa was a pretty good person. I mean, I believe she had good soul.
Yeah.
But I also believe she, like anybody else, knew how to kind of let her horns come out a little bit, and she
was
could
having an affair with a married man.
She could have a little fun on occasion. I'll just leave it at that.
Well, yeah, I mean, the very first chapter of Wrecking Crew by John Farrack deals with exactly that. The fact that, there are some professions which will be inherently more dangerous than others. And certainly if you're a freelance photographer going round to, salvage yards, you are going to meet, dare I say, a slightly lower class of people who might want to take advantage of the situation. I think she was warned, don't go into any of the trailers with any of your customers, stay outside. But certainly when
there was a safety training there.
Yeah.
And certainly when she was doing the erotic,
she's doing the boudoir photos, she has to go inside, right?
That's right.
So that puts you at risk. And then if you get involved with the husband in those situations, that's also going to create a little more risk, unfortunately.
So yeah. I mean, on that same topic, while you mentioned it, if you believe Dave Pierce that she was getting somebody was giving her phone calls, there's really only one person who's who fits that description. That's Bradley Check.
Right.
She lets his calls go to voicemail on her cell phone quite a bit. A lot of people think it's Ryan, but she calls Ryan more than Ryan calls her. If you want to know the truth. If Bradley's number sort of fits the profile of getting harassing calls, she lets those calls go to voicemail, which is interesting. But I diverted from your original question,
which was simply, are you sort of thinking in terms of the Manitowoc Sheriff's Department have definitely set something up here?
Oh, there's no doubt that it's where it seems to me. If I disagree with Kathleen Zellner at my own peril, right? I mean, she's obviously a very smart person, and if she had a bigger word count, she would have said something more. But I believe FL was planted. I believe the key was planted. So therefore, Manitowoc is at the heart of this one way or another. It all goes back to Coerced, the longtime sheriff, and it probably wasn't even about the money, even though I think you would have got a substantial amount, because it was really about the power structure. When both sides of the political aisle start lining up against you, then you know that you're in for trouble. right?
Right.
And that's what was happening, right? With the Avery task force, both sides are trying to outdo each other. Oh, this can't happen again. We need reform. We need to investigate. Peg L hires Deb Strauss and Amy Lehman to go out and do this whitewash. It comes back again. Oh, nothing to see here, folks. The worst thing that happened was that they failed to investigate somebody who was, a possible interest, and it's obviously much more than that. Kacerek told Vogel that don't fuck this up, right? That's what Kacerek said to Vogel. Don't fuck this up.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, that's how I feel about the case too. Is just you just got to look at it like this: the one piece of evidence, or the one part of evidence in this case that is the most difficult to deal with, is the blood in the RAV.
The blood in the RAV. Yep.
So we'll put the blood in the RAV aside for a second. So we'll go look at all the other pieces of evidence here. We got bones obviously planted in the burn pit. We've got a key obviously planted in the bedroom. We've got hood latch DNA clearly planted after coercing Brendan into saying something happened under the hood. We've got item FL, which is clearly planted. We've got none of Teresa's blood in the trailer, so there's no suggestion that this crime actually took place. So what all these other pieces of evidence tell me is that, number one, there's plenty of planted evidence. There is no proof that a crime took place. And so you said it before, right, Paul? Occam's razor. Occam's razors tells me if I have all this bullshit in one place, then that blood in the RAV is bullshit too. It's just kind of follows along. If I got all this bullshit, that's probably bullshit too.
Yeah. Why couldn't it be? I don't know why Kathleen sticks to this the sink theory. I don't like it very much. People make fun of it.
I'm not crazy about it myself.
It seems to me that it's much better explained as potentially being rehydrated blood from his Grand Am. If you look at the pictures that Henbury had released of his Grand Am, his blood all over the place. It looks like he, you want to talk about active bleeding?
I think he cut himself with a screwdriver, so he probably did leave a fair amount of blood before he got it under control.
Yeah, so to me, that's where I tend to think that it came from. Dr. Silkman has a presentation where he says that that EDTA test they did at the FBI. Yeah. How do we know that cocaine didn't send him a blood swab from the Grand Am? How do we even know? Right? I mean,
yes.
Right.
For me, the puzzling thing is that the press did not immediately jump on Mike Holbach when he referred to Teresa as the grieving process, when Teresa was still only a missing person. If he has been told that she has met her demise, who would she have been? Who would have told him that? It would have had to have been law enforcement.
Right.
Wasn't there a case in the UK as well, Paul, where a person got investigated for referring to the missing person in the past tense? And it
was a very famous case in Soham, in which the guy, Maxine Carr and Ian Huntley. Ian Huntley had murdered two little girls, but Maxine Carr knew what her boyfriend had done, and in an interview with Sky News, she referred to one of the girls in the past tense, and of course immediately the TV crew, the producers, they said, "Did you hear that? What Maxine Carr said?" She said that this little girl was a nice girl because she was her school teacher. Was a nice girl in the past tense, and this just led to the whole case being blown open. And my point would be this: imagine if it wasn't Teresa Holbach that had gone missing. Imagine maybe it was, say, Barb. And imagine if Stephen Avery had come out with the comment, the grieving process could last days, when she's only missing process. They would have jumped on him straight away and said that's a confession.
Yeah. Right. I agree.
They would have seen it straight away as being what it was. But yet, in the case of Mike Holbach, not a dicky bird said about it.
Bat an eyelid.
Yeah. But, I mean, there's a lot of crazy stuff in this case. The beginning of which is not the Holbachs, right? Mike Holbach getting a job with the Green Bay Packers,
right?
Is suspect.
Dream job for somebody his age, right?
Yep, dream job for Tim Hallback, the younger brother, getting a partnership in a law firm. You know, that
chair of some bar association as well.
Right, the dairy, you know, the dairy business, which his parents are in. But yeah, you know, all this happened. Mike Hallback got that job a year before Teresa went missing. So, you know, if you want to say that that's somehow related to this, then you have to think of a more nefarious motive. Than,
you have to get pretty nefarious to try to say that. So maybe he got it on his own merits. Fair enough.
Maybe so, and maybe the same for Tim. And you know, what about Kathy Williford being a DOJ operative? So you know, what was you know, is Auto Trader a shill company for the DOJ? They're going to call. People are going to call. There are shill companies. They're a real thing.
I know we have Auto Trader here in California too, but maybe the Wisconsin branch is. I don't know. That would be interesting. Auto Trader, as far as I know, is just a newspaper. You know, it's.
Does it actually make money?
You know, I'm not sure how profitable it is, and I know I used to see it a lot more 15 years ago than I do nowadays. But
well, I've got it as an app on my phone. I look it up all the time. In fact, Auto Trader. I actually bought Eunice's first Audi A5 in sterling as a result of finding it on the Auto Trader app.
Yeah.
And went up to sterling to get it. You know.
There you go. Yeah. So you would just flip through this thing, and there would just be hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of black and white photos of different vehicles and stuff. And
oh yeah. I mean, certainly. I mean, you know, you got to remember within the garage trade, you know, people are, you know, for want of a better word, petrol heads, and they will go through all of those kind of adverts. You know, absolutely.
Yeah, you're always looking for
nothing
that
clean.
You know.
Nothing clean in this whole case. You know, every onion you try and peel back, all you find is more onion. There is nothing. You never get to the center.
Every answer brings three more questions.
That's right.
Yeah. I mean,
it's hard to believe every murder case is like this, and that's what makes it even more suspicious. That there's just nothing. There's nothing clean cut. Right. The timeline isn't clean cut. The people who you expect to act a certain way don't act anything like they're supposed to act, but yet they've gotten these tremendous boons, but they got them a whole year ago.
Yeah.
So it's, you know, it's not surprising that there's certain people who think that she's alive still. I don't know. The best ways for me that I can think of to help Kathleen is to help her with potential Denny suspects, to throw, you know, expertise that I have at it. I don't think we're going to solve it. It's just buried too deep in history. But exposing all this crazy stuff, I think, helps her somehow.
Well, I agree. The investigators may have screwed the pooch on this one by failing to follow investigative leads. We may never know what actually happened, and I think you're absolutely right about that.
Well, yeah, I think that Kathleen Zellner at the moment is, you know, she was given a certain amount of evidence to test. She's tested it. Everything that she's tested has pointed away from Stephen. So now, you know, she's got to go where the evidence points. Once she gets some more evidence, then she can start pointing the fingers at other people, you know. But I mean, at the moment, I fully accept at the moment that she's got to point the finger and say, Bobby Dassey, you know, you need to talk. You need to tell us what game you're playing at. Why, you know, at the very least,
story's inconsistent. Tell me.
Very least, why did you commit perjury against your uncle? And at the worst, what do you know about what happened to Teresa?
Right. Well, she's angling for that evidentiary hearing, right? I mean, you did a nice reading of her brief. A bunch of people did reading. I was fortunate to be able to be joined by Travis when we did ours on Millbull's channel, and she's really asking for three things. She's either asking for give me my scientific testing, which I've asked for, give me my evidentiary hearing, or give me a new trial. Those are her three asks. for and to do that, I found it amazing that a lot of things I didn't know in that brief is that they have to assume her facts are true. If you read what Judge Suckowitz did, she jumps to conclusions that she's not supposed to jump to without having a hearing.
Right.
And that's basically the abuse of yeah. She's just an asshat. We all know it.
Yeah.
She I think she probably needed to focus. I think she was 11 words below her max word count in this recent submission.
Right.
So she probably had to focus on Bobby, even though she has other Denny's. I think that Ryan Hilligus is a great Denny suspect because of the day planner.
Yes.
That's something that Allie Apperson, I learned about from Allie a long time ago.
Right.
One of the other videos, first video I watched was about the day planner. How did he get it? You have to explain that.
Right.
So
I tell you, Allie Apperson is someone else, and she is bloody good at doing the gay Gordons. I can tell you that much. She is superb at the Scottish dancing. as for him down there, he's useless. Couldn't dance to save his life.
When you're doing the gay Gordons, when you pass Eric Jose, you gotta stop and say "fuck off, dude," and then.
But
I think that those videos are great. I love to watch Millbilly's videos, and I love to watch Dr. Silkman's videos, because when you really learn about the forensic evidence in this case, like you mentioned about the garage, right? They had to coerce him that it was in the garage and not out of the garage. But oh, by the way, where is the forensic evidence? Where is the blood spatter? Where's the micro spray? Not only on the areas of the garage, but on the gun itself. Where's the blowback? You just can't. That's he didn't clean that up. He's not a genius cleaner.
Right. He's not an idiot savant.
That's right.
So I do love Zellner's in the original motion, the whole idiot savant part, because I was laughing my ass off the first time I read that part because it was just so apt.
Yep. The genius did this, but the idiot did that.
Right. It's like he's too stupid to realize he needs to clean up the bullet and to get certain things out of the garage, but he wears gloves, but then for some reason leaves a few spots of blood in the RAV4 anyway, and it's like just like where she's back and forth. It's just like hilarious to me. So
yeah. Even Earl, in the jail calls, Stephen and Earl aren't getting along very well during that time, and Earl actually has his doubts. But when push comes to shove, Earl always comes back to say, if you probably would have crushed it. There's no way you wouldn't have been so stupid as to leave the RAV there. You would have crushed it. You probably would have crushed it.
Right. Yeah. If you had crushed it there, why wouldn't you? Right. Absolutely.
You just can't. It's just not believable that that he'd be so stupid as to leave the RAV there, especially after the excellent cleaning job, to leave that one stain by the ignition.
Right.
That's shaped like a Q-tip, of which we don't have a picture. I don't think do we have a picture of that blood stain before it's swabbed by Culhane? Or does every single picture, the one before it, do they all have that Q-tip looking thing on it?
Oh, they all look like they were put on with a Q-tip. The pictures I've seen of it, but I'm not sure if they're before or after swabbing. I don't know. I guess that's an interesting. Imagine
if they were after, it would explain the Q-tip look. But where's the pictures? Where's the pictures of the bones in the burn pit? We don't have those. The whole coroner thing. Silkman's got a new video on that, it's just crazy. In what universe don't we get to see the picture? And in the brief, the brief, she had a couple of new ones in the brief. Maybe you'd heard them before, but the expert evidence saying that the way that the bones are spread out around the burn pit area has the look that somebody dumped a burn barrel into the burn area.
Yeah, because they were saying some of the bones had fallen out of the actual burn pit and were actually like out of the burn pit area.
Yeah, how'd that happen?
Yeah, so he's saying that was from dumping, and then a couple bones just kind of toppled out of the pit and kind of into the area next to the pit. So it was like that. So that's how. Who was it? Reich? think it was Reich that had determined.
Reich, probably. Yeah.
Whatever that somebody dumped, and when they dumped, a few of them toppled into the area outside of the pit, and that's why we found bones outside of the pit, and that's their assertion. So, and I think it's a good assertion because.
And we have the evidence of the is it the same guy Reich who said they just can't generate enough fuel in an open fire pit to burn a body, so it's much more likely that he was burned in a burn barrel.
Right.
Why would anybody dump the contents of the burn barrel in the quarry and Michael's quarry all over the place, but then dump one of them in your own burn area, right? If the primary burn site was the burn barrel, why would you dump it in your own fire pit?
If it was Steven doing it, he wouldn't have put any in his burn pit. If it was, what I mean?
Exactly.
If he was dumping them everywhere else, he wouldn't have put any in his own burn pit, right?
Yeah.
It
just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, and that's the other thing about this too, is that I feel like the lack of pictures. I mean, that happens because detectives were quickly rushing to it. After who is it? It was Sturdivant,
Bushman,
Yost,
Sturdivant,
and Yost that discovered the bones that day on the 8th.
Yeah.
The 8th, and it's like they immediately start digging in. They immediately start digging up. They don't wait. They don't wait for like a forensic collection. They just immediately, ham-fistedly is the word I want to use, start just digging in and start messing up the scene. And then you get Ertl when he gets there, is like, they've already destroyed it, so there's no point. And it's like, to me, it's like they were deliberately trying to start the collection and messy up the scene. Just to
there's only one day where there's no dogs in the property.
You know what I mean? Just to obfuscate it a little bit more. Yep.
Yeah, no pictures, and no dogs. No dogs on the property on the 8th either.
Right.
The only day on the 8th. What a shock.
Yeah. The thing is, though, that when Ertl comes along and says, that those bones have obviously been rearranged and gathered up, we have no testimony of anybody saying that they did actually gather up a pile of bones. It would appear as though Ertl came across the bones exactly as they were, how they were dumped, and that's what should have been taken a photograph of, but nobody did, because they could see straight away. They could see straight away that they were dumped there.
And digging right in, they didn't. I mean, there's no chance to see how they looked. It's like they didn't want people to see how they lie. You understand? I guess that's what I'm getting at. They didn't want people to see the lie. And when I say the lie, I mean the way that they were laying, not the fact that they were lying. I can see how that could get confusing, but
the lay of the bones, how they were laying,
how they end up like that.
Yeah. Have you had a chance at all, either of you, to catch up on some of the Doomsday Cult stuff with Laurie Vallow and Tylee? No, very interesting.
Part of one video with one of their friends where she was she was saying that they were pretty weird. But
they've discovered the two children, the 17-year-old and the young 17-year-old, buried in Chad Daybell's backyard, right? The youngest boy had been put in various plastic bags, so he was still perfectly preserved, but the 17-year-old girl had been dismembered and burnt, but only partly burnt. And I think this tends to show, doesn't it? What they were saying was the idea that you can just chuck somebody in a bonfire and that will destroy all the evidence. It doesn't. It's so difficult, as we found out when we followed Making Murder to number 2. So difficult to get rid of a human corpse. And that's the parallels are quite quite interesting shocking in this, Well, yes, shocking, but also the fact that there are some parallels which aren't the same. This idea that Stephen Avery, and Brendan Dassey just chucked on the bonfire, went and had a couple of sodas, watched a bit TV, came out. That's fine. That's
Brendan
that's
doesn't
that
draw
body
any
got
pictures of her cut up.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I would argue you wouldn't draw any pictures at all if we didn't have O'Kelly there committing child abuse. But
Yeah. If Brendan really knew how it happened, he would have drawn cut up because that's how it had to happen.
Right. Yeah. You would think.
Yeah. We have the kerf marks on the bones.
Right.
Yeah. That's a very good point.
Which is what she wanted to get her expert Stephen Symes in to look at, because that was one of the things they were agreeing to, is to have Leslie Eisenberg and Stephen Symes together looking at those kerf marks and to kind of determine how these bones go together and say, well, there's no question now, right? These two bones went together. This one's from the the gravel pit, and this one's from the burn barrel. So,
that's right.
You know what I mean? It's like,
they're from the same. From the same.
Like, there's no question now.
Right.
So
that's right.
So I was gonna get you to elaborate a little bit more, if you could. You were talking earlier, Jeff, about the fact that your expertise is in cell phones and stuff like that.
Yes, sir.
And I do seem to remember I was on a chat with Dr. Silkman, and I seem to remember that you were talking about this kind of technology. So I was wondering if you could expand a little bit more on how you were able to sort of investigate the phone calls.
Yeah. The calls themselves. I mean, I'm very lucky to be working with a couple of people who actually have the energy to dig in and comb through the calls.
Right.
And I'll give a shout out to my friend Justin Denny, who's actually taken the time to really dig hard into the phone calls. I'm not retired from work yet, like a lot of people who have a ton of time to work at this case. Like they get mad at me for not researching.
Right.
I have work to do.
Yes, sorry.
But the pings themselves. I mean, I have had the opportunity to work a little bit with federal law enforcement, and I very much understand exactly what they're after, and I've been deep into the cellular area since about 2005, and I have a passing understanding of the technology of Teresa's cell phone, which is GSM, the Global System for Mobile, and how that works, and the various pieces of information that they should have been able to get their hands on. And whenever I got this FOIA from Seeking Truth for Good, and it's important to point out, very much so. So you guys, I'm sure, are both experts on the CASO, right? So Uyghur files this exigent subpoena that says you got to tell me where her pings were, right? And we've had the document for a long time, which says what towers her phone pinged off of. Now, do you think that Singular Wireless would send such a document without sending the information about where the towers themselves were? Right? Do you think that would be possible in this universe? The answer to that is no. They would not do that. Right. But is there a document number for that in CASO? Right. That this is how this is a buried piece of evidence that a YouTube researcher FOIA'd, and in a moment of weakness they actually sent it to her. That had the tower locations that it had, because Singular sent that back. Here the tower she pinged off of on the 31st. So I'm in her home area of Appleton and all the way over down by Zippers and Avery's. Here are the towers from the tracking area locations that the tracking area codes that she pinged off of, all of them. So yeah, once you have that and you can see the distance between those towers, we all know the way cell phones work is that maybe we don't, is that in GSM, what happens is that each tower publishes what's called a neighbor list, and the reason why it does that is because as you're assuming mobility, eventually you're going to get out of range in the tower that you're in, and the network itself is giving you these hints about what towers you might run into next by having this so-called neighbor list. Now, the actual towers on the list are lost to history at this point, unless we can get some deep program from AT&T. We know that
happened to print it out at the time. That just happens to have the piece of paper sitting around.
sitting around. But you don't have towers that are 3 towers away on the neighbor list from the tower that you're on, right? So it's proximity based. If you leave the footprint of one tower, you're going to go into another one. And this White Law tower is, it's hard for me to believe that it was even on the neighbor list of the tower she pinged on before, which is right by Zippers. So it's just not believable.
Right.
That would come in, and once you look through the way that it works is you look through the towers in the neighbor list, you see which is coming in the strongest, and you try and attach to that one. Right. So it's just hard to believe that one would be coming in the strongest. That first it would be on the list at all, but second that it'd be coming in the strongest. There are a lot of cell towers that are really, really close to the Averys.
Right.
Much closer than that one.
Hmm.
Yeah, it always struck me that if she was going back to Hilbert from the Avery salvage yard, the quickest way is just to turn left and just to carry on straight through Larrabee and just go straight to Hilbert. You know, the idea that she would be going south at some point, it just doesn't make any sense, because we know that she had some sort of, you know, I would call it a navigation system. Was it called a Palm Pilot?
Right. Yeah, she had
that wasn't navigation. That was like that. They used to call those PDAs, personal digital assistants. You know, people's phone numbers.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, right. It was like a
she would print out.
Essentially, it was like a notebook, cell phone in one. It was like, you know. So
it wasn't even a cell phone. It didn't have any connectivity at all. It had an SD card. That was it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah. So it was like a little personal assistant. But yeah,
people bought them. You know, they were kind of a fad at one point, but they didn't really take on. Right? They just didn't really catch on because they just at the end of the day.
Had one for a while. He liked it because he could be out in the field and he could make changes to his computer notes, and it would get back to the shop, or he could hook it back into his computer when he got back to the shop, and any notes he made would then appear and things like that. So I know my boss used to like it. One of my bosses.
Yeah, and when they gave him eventually cell plans, like you say, that's when they started to catch on. And if you look at your smartphone now, it's like a more advanced vision of where they were trying to go with that. But they didn't have that back then. And that thing didn't even, that PDA she had didn't even have a Wi-Fi connection. She had it was pretty
USB basically.
It didn't even really have that. Well, a custom plug that you could plug into the computer.
Yeah, custom USB or something like
that.
Yeah. Similar, but not quite USB.
I was starting to call it standard. You know, if it's USB, it'd be standard. But there was nothing standard about those things, those devices back then. She would print out MapQuest maps, right? That's what we know from her internet browsing history, is that she would do that the night before.
Right.
So we still don't know when she had this epiphany. You know, if that message that we hear is really the message that she left on Barb's answering machine, we don't know. As Zellner pointed out in one of her briefs, you know, how is it that she actually discovered that, you know, it was the Averys that she was going to? We don't know the answer to that question, right? That's why Zellner said she was contacted by non-telephonic means.
I know I've seen it referred that I know I've seen this somewhere. I think it was something along the lines of somebody from Auto Trader called her and gave her the address before the other lady called her. There was two ladies from Auto Trader that were calling her that day. Anyways, you know what? I can't remember fully right now, but I know I've done a video about it before. I can't remember exactly how she gets it either. It is kind of it is tricky though. The thing that's interesting about that though is that she does get told where she's going eventually. She does, well, however she finds out, she eventually knows where she's going, and it blows Kratz's theory that she was afraid of the Averys right out of the water.
Right.
So,
yeah, I mean, the fact that whether she's going to Stephen Avery or Barb Avery, it's still Avery Road. She still knows exactly where she's going, doesn't she?
Exactly where she's going, and she
knows where.
It's beyond that, not the Avery.
Where she's going.
Beyond it. Yeah.
She's perfectly happy going. So it blows Kratz's BS right out of the water. So.
Now, normally at this stage, the dude would cringe because I would ask you the crunch question, but.
Did you see me cringing when you Dr. Leo yesterday? I was like, oh god. Go ahead.
I would actually sort of wondered if you'd like to speculate. I suppose I would call this, Jeff, your sort of hopes, but tempered with expectations as to you know what we can look forward to in this case. What would your hopes be? What do you expect to happen? What are your thoughts going forward with this case?
I would like to believe that there are enough honest judges in Wisconsin at this level You know, people are probably throwing Rotten Tomatoes at their computer right now. I have to say that. But this is the level that Zellner says that she begins to see some action. It's hard to believe that she's not going to get an evidentiary hearing out of this one way or the other. Minimally, she should get her scientific testing. They should grant her that.
I think that's back on the table as well. I agree.
Yeah, if the judges are really interested in stifling her, what they ought to do is have the evidentiary hearing now at this level, so they can stifle it before it gets into federal court, where she's has a lot more success, right? So kill it now, or it might get out of control. And who knows whether she has any more stuff up her sleeve in the same way that she has, that she pulled some of those things out from her brief. I mean, when she pulled in the last one, the groin swab and said Uyghur, yeah, exactly, Tony.
he is really cheesed off because the Crows got hammered again today by I think it was Hawthorne Hawks. So I'm afraid I watched some of it and it was grim watching. So anyway, apologies.
I think she gets her evidentiary hearing, and we'll see. If the bombs that she drops are so good, then they're gonna have trouble. They're gonna have trouble, sort of deflecting the Brady violations that are there. Brady violations spawn new trials. That's it. But you have to have a hearing to see, whether this meets that, and we'll see that. We'll see that as censor on her appeals moving forward. Now, I did send you an email about the crunch question. I don't know if you got it.
Oh, right. Yes.
I have done some independent research.
Excellent.
Oh, good. We're going to open this.
I wonder if you can call those slides up, because what I have is crucial information to the crunch debate.
Let's go and have a look. See
we've heard this before, but
yes.
Let's see.
Yes. See if I can find. I gotta
figure out what I did with that birth certificate.
Yes. Yes. Look, see if I can find.
It's imperative that this question gets answered properly via research. I don't know what documentary people have watched.
Never going to get answered. There's always going to be conflict over this. Just for a moment though, just going back to Dr. Siltman's vote to try to solve this, and it never got solved. So, you know what I mean. Anyway,
there we go. I've got it. Yes.
Did you figure out?
Arrived.
Yeah. All right.
Slowly but surely. It's yes. What I was going to say though is that
Paul needs some of that.
When it came to the
some smart water.
sort of the judges in Wisconsin, I think that yes, I think you can expect a certain amount of quality as we go up the food chain, as it were. I would, but temper with that with the fact that it all depends on public opinion. When public opinion turned on Ken Kratz, one of the judges that really did give him a good doing was William Griesbach.
Really?
Yes. Well, you read that, dude. It was William Griesbach was one of the judges that went with the opinion of that other judge who had done a sort of investigation of it. Mm-hmm. And it was him that said, whilst yes, you do have some sort of qualified immunity whilst acting as the DA, but because of your sexting, that has got nothing at all to do with acting as a DA.
Right. Oh, right. Because you're acting outside the outside the parameters of the DA when you do that, right?
Yeah, I think the sad part of it all is that very often judicial appointments are sort of a reward for playing ball elsewhere. Yeah. And we were looking through some of who some of the judges were, and we were shocked to find somebody who actually gave a deposition in the 1985 trial, 1985, Eric Loy, by the name of Jennifer Nashhold. who was actually Deb Strauss and Amy Lehman's boss, and the one who wrote the first draft. And she's was appointed as a judge, I think, in a different district to the south of Manitowoc. But those who play ball get judicial appointments. So yeah, I think it's gonna be tough.
Like,
the only hope is that enough.
Lachinsky's the proof of that. He got a judgeship. He harassed his clerk in such a creepy way. Charges were brought against him. Jury finds him guilty, and he's back to work.
Yeah.
It's called the Teflon.
What do they call it? Diploma privilege? Diploma privilege? Is that what it's spelled?
I think it must. Yeah. It's a good old boy system.
The Teflon load. Okay, here we go then. I will pop the slides up if Jeff, if you would like to.
I'm just gonna have to ship him a monitor. I'm gonna ship him a fucking TV.
There we go.
There it is.
Slide number 1.
All right.
The amiable captain. We all love him. One thing I saw, one thing I read as I was reading, the reason that he's kind of looking down like that is because they actually he's making eye contact with children because they would buy out certain shelves on the stores. So by the fact that he's looking down, it looks like he's an adult making eye contact with children. That's why he's looking down in those pictures, supposedly. Okay. But anyway, there's the amiable captain who we love so much.
Right. It's strange how his eyebrows are actually on his hat. I've never quite understood why.
I think
it's because they're so bushy like Melch's.
Anyway.
Yeah.
Hold on a sec, Jeff. Could you just spare me one moment while I mute the dude's mic? I'm only kidding.
We're here to talk about Chris, and you're gonna mute me?
Okay, why don't we go on to the next one, because that's the title slide.
Oh, there we go. Yes.
Okay, look. Here's the deal. Okay, in the United States Navy, we have these things called epaulets, right?
Yes.
And an epaulet is a rank insignia. Very often, it's on the shoulder, right? You can see a star. It's a 1-star general. But also in the dress uniforms, they happen to have them on their sleeves. Okay. Mm-hmm. And if you're a captain, you have 4 bars on your sleeve, and if you only have 3 bars on your sleeve, that makes you a commander. And that rank insignia is actually common among many navies around the world. That 4 means you've reached that level. In the officer chain, and it's actually a mimicry of the old I think Spanish Navy, the way that they used to do it. But that rank insignia is pretty clear. So if we go on to the next slide, we can actually see how many stripes does our good captain have?
I suspect I know the answer. Yes.
Oh.
3.
So I think I see where this is going. I think I'll let this go a little further before I.
Before you weigh in, you might not be you might be in for a twist.
Maybe so. I'm intrigued here. So okay.
So that puts him at the rank of commander, right? So
right.
I don't think he's a liar. I think people call him a captain. So what could he be? So why don't we go on and see some more evidence?
Okay, more evidence.
What's some more evidence? Oh well, okay. Well, wait. The U.S. Navy has actually addressed whether or not he's a captain. I don't know if you can read for us, Paul, what it says below that caption.
Absolutely.
This came up before, I remember.
Let me see if I can get that in the middle so you can see that. Is that enough for you, Jeff? Do you want to read it?
I can't read it. No, I can't read it because I'm on my phone and it's just too small for my.
Oh, right.
So if you can read it, that would be great.
On you go then, dude. On you go. Can you read it, dude?
So there you go. Well, the only part we need to know is after 50 years of purporting to be a naval captain, the imposter was finally unmasked yesterday by an alert fan on culinary site Food Beast, who pointed out that Crunch is wearing the wrist stripes of a U.S. Navy commander rather than a captain. So basically, he's gallivanting around as a captain when he should only be a commander.
So the question I think is can you have 3 stripes and still be addressed as captain, and if so, where?
All right.
Isn't that a good question?
Sure.
So, but let's first take a look. What about that hat? So there's a picture on the right. You see the amiable captain on the left. Whose hat does that look more like? Is that more like John Paul Jones? We all familiar with John Paul Jones, the famous Navy captain,
right?
Or is that hat more like Napoleon's hat? I think it looks more like Napoleon's hat.
Yeah.
So one might ask ourselves, what are the French naval ranks? So if we go on to the next slide, we find the French naval ranks.
And 3 stripes is captain. Come on.
Can you read where that?
Captain de frigate.
Captain of a frigate.
Commander. There you go.
At the commander level.
Captain Crunch is a French commander. There you go.
Well, just that's what my research shows. A lot of things. I was not duped by the same documentary that you guys were. I did my own independent research, and I found out that that's my current opinion is that he's a captain de frigate.
Hey, well, I've always said that cat was more Napoleonic. And like I said, that would always suggest that he was more European than American. So thank you very much, Jeff. Stellar research, buddy.
But I think the debate will rage on. I don't know that that's definitive.
I mean, I think Quaker cereals could probably come out and tell us a definitive answer, and we'd still be arguing about it.
But Paul said I had to address it, so I figured I would just do a little presentation.
Oh, that was fun. Yeah, no, that was fun.
Dude, I don't think you should get all cocky about this. Your initial accusation was that Captain Crunch was British. Jeff has just proven to you he is not British. Whether he's American or French, it matters not. The fact is, he's definitely not American. So there.
Sure. Okay. Well, as you guys remember, I was saying he's British, or at least judging by his crew and his hat, that he is at least more European than he is American. If you remember, that's the way the argument went. So
I don't recall that at all.
It's in there. You go back and watch those videos. I know I said that at least freaking 20 times in the course of those videos. Anyways.
Well, I actually got a message from Mark Wiegert. And he wrote to me, and he said to me, "Thank you for your inquiry. Yeah. As you are aware, both here in Calumet and in Manitowoc, we have some crackerjack detectives who can literally supply evidence out of thin air. Along with our colleagues at the Wisconsin Department of Justice, we can provide proof that Captain Crunch is whatever nationality you wish him to be, along with a signed confession that he is indeed from the country of your choosing. We will then provide you with an affidavit to say that we are 100% certain of his place of origin and will stand behind everything done in the case. We have enjoyed a great success rate over the years, and if you are still unsure and you have a chance to, you may want to read former prosecutor Kratz's book. Sincerely, Mark Wiegert." So there.
Wow.
You forgot the part where Coerced says, "I don't care if you're British. We're going to make you American anyway."
Listen, Jeff, enjoy the rest of your evening in Massachusetts. Dude, enjoy the rest of your afternoon on Crunch Island. Thank you so much for joining me.
It's coming, folks. All right. Anyway.
Yeah. So, obviously, can you just finish off by telling us a little bit about what we can look forward to on Foul Play? What have we got coming up?
Well, we recently published a TTT, and you should go look at that. It was about the state, and rather than start at the beginning and work forward, we kind of started at the end and work back. That was very interesting. We also have our ongoing coffee series that you can listen to on Sunday morning or catch. You can also find me on Millbilly's channel, where we have an ongoing series with an Australian investigator who's a real life police who we're sharing the evidence with, Inspector T, Investigator T. who is just really is honest with us about what the cops are really doing and really should be doing. And we also have a very special project coming up that's associated with Brendan. Look for it. I'll just tease it a little bit and leave it at that. We know somebody that has a condition very similar to Brendan. So look for that coming up.
Excellent. And dude, I believe
get a police officer. If there's somebody listening, I'm actually looking to get a police officer here in the States, somebody who does patrol that could come on with me and answer a few questions about Daniel Holtzclaw. So if there's anybody out there that might know somebody that might be able to do that, because I want to illustrate for people how cops do certain things because it's their job to do it. And in the Holtzclaw case, he's been abandoned by his brothers, and they're not fessing up to the things that he was trained to do. And so I'm looking to bring in an independent officer who will attest to the fact that cops are trained to do things like the clasp and shake, like, various things that are going on in the Holtzclaw case. So if anybody out there is able to help me with that or knows somebody who could come on to help me with that, I'd appreciate it.
Also, don't forget the Powder Puff podcast on Foul Play as well. I almost forgot that.
Oh, absolutely. So basically, the bad news for Guilters is that we are full steam ahead.
We have an army of people. We have an army of people that want to do research. Even those who aren't very familiar with the case are volunteering to do reads. If you haven't listened to the pretrial transcripts, when you're busy, I used to have a long commute to work before I was confined with COVID, and it just pops up. You want to listen to these people do excellent readings. You can learn a lot. See Fassbender's lies. Listen to Pam Sturm call it a two-door Rav. Listen to Ryan Hilligus lie through his teeth on the pretrial, and soon they're going to move on to the trial. And when they do the trial, they're going to have multiple voices. It's actually entertaining and informative. We have an army of people and that are interested in various aspects, and we're getting the word out. And the channels that I belong to are growing. They're not shrinking; they're growing. I think when we get this ruling, either way, either we're going to look forward to the evidentiary hearing, the further scientific testing, or the Zellner's appeal to the next level court. So there's going to be plenty of food for this case, and thank you to Laura and Moira for making us all aware, because this level of injustice cannot stand.
Right. Sure. I mean, dude, Jeff makes a good point. The community, particularly the YouTube community, is growing. You want to be careful next time you go wearing that kilt. The consequences could be amazing. Well, dude, would you like to finish off by doing the usual?
Oh, folks, the drill. If you haven't already, please hit subscribe. We'll see you.
It's goodbye from
thank you, Big
Paul.
Jeff. Thank you, Eric Rosie.
You're welcome. It's goodbye from Eric Rosie, and it's goodbye from them. Goodbye.
I never know which ending you want.